Welcome to the Background Noise Podcast, Episode 2. I'm your host, Jack, along with hosts Joseph and Joe. Say hi, gents.
Hello?
Are we really actually here?
Now, that's the question we're going to try to answer. We're going to go back about 21, 22 years, back to 1999. We're going to talk about the first Matrix film, and as well as its sequels, since we just got the new Matrix trailer that just came out a week from today, actually, Matrix Resurrections. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, just go over the trilogy and kind of give our thoughts on that and our thoughts on this trailer. So I guess we will be starting out with, when did you guys first see the movie?
So I first saw the first Matrix. I watched, there's a period of time when I was like, I don't know, in my early teens, like 12, 13, 14 area, where my dad and I were watching a bunch of quote unquote old movies, and which isn't like, not like 50 years ago movies, but 10 years ago movies. And so that's when we watched the trilogy in back to back to back weeks.
And I just saw it Saturday. this
right.
last Saturday.
For the first time.
For the first time in forever. Yeah, pretty much. Well, I heard about the Matrix. I mean, how can you not at least hear of the Matrix? But it's just sort of like, oh yeah, the Matrix, the thing that everybody parodies in the cartoons or whatever. Yeah, the trench coats, the sunglasses, the bullet time, and it's just like, yeah, that's cool and all. And I just never watched it until this sort of came up. I got a buddy of mine who's obsessed with the Matrix. I'm just like, all right, that's cool.
Well, if nothing else comes from this podcast, if anything, we got you to watch one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time. So I'm happy, if nothing
Something
else.
I will always regret. Oh, wait. Mike's not on mute. Never mind.
Oh, you go your whole life without watching this very overrated garbage movie that no one really likes, and we suckered you into it.
Yep, that's right. You know me, local contrarian.
Let me see. For me, I want to say I was in middle school when I watched this. I very distinctly remember this being the first R-rated film I ever watched.
Ooh.
And it's still probably one of the lightest R-rated films in general that's probably ever been released, because I think it's just R for violence, and even the violence is very tame compared to other films rated R for violence. It's very light R is how I'll put it. But I definitely remember being the first R film I've seen, and just remember loving it, and never heard good things about them. And then years later, when I was in a bit of a, I guess it would have been last year, maybe 2 years ago, I was really in a fan edits craze, just looking around, seeing avid fans fixing films, because you've had a bunch of people go and do cuts of The Hobbit, which I found very interesting. They've gone and edited films like the 1984 Dune. They've just gone back and edited these films, these fans who have seen that there is a good film somewhere within these bad films, and cutted and copied and pasted to make these sorts of, fan edits. And some of them are good, some of them are not. But this one that I watch was called The Matrix Revolutions Decoded, which is what you both watched as well. That's what I sent you guys.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was very good. I mean, not great, especially not compared to the first one, but still had some solid scenes, and I still liked the world. So, I mean, it was fun. Couldn't really capture the love of the first one. Couldn't capture that same just uniqueness again. I mean, like Joseph and I were talking earlier, can't capture lightning in a bottle twice, because Matrix did so much right the first time. But it was still fun getting to see this edit of the two and cut out a lot of the trash from the two, which we'll get into later. And yeah, I liked the overall. The first one was perfection. The second and third have some okay scenes, and they're fine.
All right, yeah, that's pretty good. But if you were to sum up the whole thing plot-wise, not opinion-wise, in 2 sentences, how would you?
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
Oh, yeah.
Here's my 2-sentence summary. Humans are batteries. They want to be free.
Some
Very nice.
want to be free.
I
Let's
mean-
not say they want to be free, because we found very distinctly, even in the first film, that some do not want to be free.
So this is a question then. This is a question that I have. So we'll go ahead and get into this then. Is it that they don't want to be free, or is it that they aren't being offered the choice at a level that they can understand it? Like we have the Neo character and the Morpheus character and all of these people who like they subconsciously knew that something was wrong, and so that's why they reject the Matrix. But with other people, if they were told, "Hey, you're living in a simulation and none of this is real," would they want to wake up and leave it, or would they be like, "All right, well, I'm okay with that. We'll just stick with it." So
At that, sure, I get what you're saying. I feel like at that point it depends on a couple of things. First off, I think it depends on the lifestyle they're living inside of the Matrix, and I think it also depends on how much of this they've already found out already, how much of a draw, a pull they've gotten, like Neo and Morpheus got, like there was something wrong with the world, how much of that they've already gotten. And again, if they're doing super well in the Matrix, I can't see why they'd want to escape.
I was about to say that's what the ending of the trilogy was like. It's like, if they want to leave, they can, but if they don't want to, here's the perfect Matrix.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
Spoiler, by the way, for a 20-year-old franchise.
Yes. If you haven't seen the first 3 Matrix movies yet, you have long past had enough time to do so.
Yeah, we might be going over at least a couple spoilers here, so just FYI. I guess, we'll just go through our general opinions on the first 3 films. Let's just knock that out. I feel like we'll be talking mainly about the first and the other 2 because it's so much better. But anyway, we'll just go general thoughts.
You have to say plenty of people have torn apart the last one.
Yeah.
We can talk about the good ones.
One major point that I have. It's not a major point. One major minor point, like a thing that I just find hilarious, is the fact that everyone is fighting in these like fancy full suits. Everyone is very, very well dressed, and yet they're doing ridiculous kung fu and insane martial arts and all kinds of acrobatics. And then they're punching people through buildings, and you get up and you just like dust some debris off of your suit, and you go back to fighting basically.
Because it's not like a fitted suit, allows for this much motion. It's these things should be ripped to shreds.
The most egregious, I think it's in the second movie where they're on the freeway and Morpheus is fighting an agent on top of a semi-truck, like on the trailer of a semi-truck, and like the amount of ridiculous moves that they're making while everyone involved is wearing a suit was too much. There was a moment where where the agent's tie gets a little bit ruffled and pulled to the side, and if I felt as though they were making a joke to the audience. we recognize that this doesn't make any sense. Like, we recognize that if you were actually fighting like this, your jacket would be all torn up, your pants would have split 5 minutes ago. Like, so we're just like teasing you with the fact that this doesn't make any sense. Which I mean, it fits perfectly with the fact that they're in the Matrix and like they're doing all these crazy stunts and stuff, and it doesn't actually work. So it does actually fit. It's very amusing from a choreography and a cinematography perspective.
Well, if you're gonna do all these crazy fight scenes, you might as well look cool doing it. Come on.
Or at least by the 90s definition of cool.
Yeah.
The 90s were so cool. Come on.
Yeah, of course. You guys remember those black leather trench coats that they let everyone wear all the time? Oh, wait. Wait a minute.
Neither of you know that we're alive in the 90s.
I was. Okay? I was alive this year this came out. It counts.
The archives don't lie, Joe.
Okay, sure. All right.
And speaking of which, I mean, this... Again, I don't think we're going to talk about the sequels much, but the highway scene was the best scene from either one of those films easily.
Yeah.
That entire highway scene was just perfection.
It is the Matrix. It encapsulates it so much. You got the big villains going after the heroes, and it just, they're going after this guy who can make keys that can open anything. It's just, ridiculous enough, and it's great. Yeah.
All right, but now we should probably rewind back to the first film. Thank you. So,
Of course.
who wants to go first? General thoughts. I guess it's me.
Oh,
Okay.
there
Sure.
you go. Yeah.
I mean, I guess since it is one of my top 10, 20 favorite films of all time.
Do it, Jack. Gosh, do it.
Yeah. I've loved this film for so long, ever since I saw it. It gets better and better every time I see it. It just holds up so well. Even just down to when you first start, the opening scene is fantastic, especially if you go in with not knowing anything. There's so many questions they keep opening up and starting, like, who is this? What's happening? What is Trinity a bad guy? Why are the police, after her? All this. How are they able to do all these crazy things in what we think is the real world? We're getting all these questions, and then Neo starts getting all these same questions. So Neo sort of plays, we're sort of able to empathize with him because he's having all the same questions, and we don't get any answers until an hour in. And that's when we get Morpheus's exposition dump, which is great because it doesn't feel like an exposition dump because we've been having all these questions and you have all the imagery to go with his exposition dump. Exposition dump. There we go. And it's just a fantastic scene. The opening scene, again, the entire thing is perfection, but just how they set it up, giving you no information, whereas any lesser director trying to do one of these films would have probably had an opening monologue scaling through the city, giving you an idea of what's going on, and then they start the film. Whereas this just straight up just throws you right into it, and it's great.
Yeah, they probably would have shoved the machine bit in as the opening instead of the big reveal in the end of the first act.
Right, but it's a huge reveal, and waiting an hour in to reveal that, I thought was just such a good move, and just makes the movie even better.
It does really reinforce the theme because the problem, like when you watch the old other movies, or when you're watching these movies for multiple times, you already know, okay, if the Matrix, none of this is real, all of the stuff that's happening here isn't real. But like watching it that first time when you're traveling with Neo, it's you've gotten used to a reality, and you've gotten used to, like, this is what is real, and we kind of know that it's not real. Like we've been told in a couple different ways that something is up, but it's understandable that Neo is like, no, like he even when he's been pulled out of the like cocoon pod thing, and they're talking, and they're in the Nebuchadnezzar, and he's getting a little bit of the backstory, but he's rejecting it, and so it fits well with, like, the fact that they wait and get you invested in the fake world, and then say, "Oh no, this isn't actually even real." You're like, "Well, but I was invested in that portion of the world, and now you're pulling me out of it. Now you're pulling me out of the Matrix, just like Neo is being pulled out of the Matrix." So it works. And also I will say, you said we don't get the exposition dump until halfway through, but technically it's not an exposition dump, right? Because Neo doesn't know any of this information. Exposition is when two characters. I believe the correct definition of exposition is like two characters talking about something that they should know as though they don't, for the purposes of the audience. But one character being a teacher to teach another character information that they don't have. I mean, that works, and that works not as shoehorned in exposition. It actually works as like something that makes logical sense in the context of the story.
Right. And I think maybe by saying exposition dump, I mean it in a negative sense, but when he goes and he finally reveals all the information, it works. And we've been asking all these questions, so when he finally does it, it's not bad, and I just think waiting that long is really what strengthened it, because we were practically begging to have answers at that point, because they, instead of answering our questions, they kept giving us more and more questions that we needed answered. And so when he finally tells us what's going on, it's that much more shocking, and that much more, we're able to accept it that much more because we're that much more desperate almost at that point.
Exactly. And I feel like it goes back to kind of what you're saying. It's done right. I feel like exposition gets like a bad, you'll come up in like critiques and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, there's just exposition dumps everywhere. It gets a bad rap because a lot of people don't do it right. It's like, just explain, like, what is it? Kind of explaining something after not giving it any like proper build up. It's just like, oh yeah, that's why. Like directly after it happens, but after like the hour of all this, you know, crazy stuff happening, the exposition's a relief, and it's done pretty well because it is, we're the audience surrogate, and we're Neo, so it's like, yeah, it makes sense that we don't know this, and it's just like the comprehensive description of this, crazy thing that's going on.
I do have, because we're talking about this particular exposition dump, I do have one critique of the world building, which actually is something that is addressed if you listen to director commentary. The critique of the world building is that it's an interesting idea that, the robots were uprising and humans tried to find a way to shut them down, so they darken the sky, and then the robots are like, well, we found a way to harvest your bodies for energy. So we need each other in this weird symbiotic way where, like, we don't want to keep you around, but we need to keep you around to have energy, but we need something to do with you, so we put you in the Matrix. The problem is, like, on a practical level, the human body doesn't produce enough energy to actually make that work. Like, it just doesn't work as a practical thing of like having this system where you harvest human energy. But that actually is something that the directors addressed. Their original plan was to have the human brains basically act as a server farm, as a bunch of computers that work together, and you're running calculations on the brain. And then the Matrix is the background stuff that's happening in your head. Like the foreground stuff is all of the process data that's being, or maybe have that vice versa. But there's all the stuff that's happening with your brain that's being used to run computations for the computers, but they need somewhere to stick your consciousness so that it's not intruding in the process. But the problem was, at the time when the movie came out, that concept was so that actual idea in practical reality of something that we would have to use was so new that they didn't think that the viewers would be able to understand what was going on, or they didn't think they would get it. They didn't think it would work. And so they're like, okay, we'll use this other explanation that kind of conceptually makes sense.
That darn computer techno babble.
I do think that was a smart move, just because there were so many new concepts introduced in that film already, and it was already just so unique at that time that there was already so much to take in that I feel like trying to introduce something else like that would have made it even harder.
Yeah.
So I think it's funny, earlier you had mentioned how basically you had said something like they're basically, the goal is they're trying to obviously they're trying to get out of the Matrix, but I think it's funny, as more and more people are realizing the Matrix exists and they're trying to get out as we progress through the films, we care less and less about the real world and we'll go back into the Matrix because that's where all the fun stuff's happening, and nobody cares about Zion. So it's kind of funny the opposites that happen with those films.
Yeah, it's true. Because I mean, that's the part, like, the Matrix is the part where you get to see Neo eventually flying around,
right,
and punching people in midair. Like, and I will say, despite the problems with the last two of the three films, I do enjoy the fight between Agent Smith and Neo in the rain, where they're punching each other so hard that it's causing shockwaves that ripple through space. Yeah. Like, the rain ripples out and then it comes crashing back down. It is all of the fight scenes. Perhaps not all of the fight scenes are actually necessary from a plot perspective, but all of the fight scenes are very well done from just like a cinematography perspective, from just a watching them happen perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was funny because last week we were talking about Shang-Chi and how they had all those long takes. I feel like this is really one of the films that really modernized that. The long takes, especially like you have in the first one, you have the scene where they're in the dojo arena and Morpheus and Neo are training. You have that scene. You have when he fights Smith at the end.
Don't try to hit me, just hit me.
Right. All that good stuff. And
favorite moment. Okay, second favorite moment.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to get to favorite moment after this.
Yeah. So it just does such a great job with the fight scenes. They're so different. Somebody was saying you compare fight scenes from before this film and then compare fight scenes to after this film. They're very different and they start to improve. like
I
a
heard
lot.
somebody say this was the death of the '80s action movie, and yeah, no, I can see it.
Yeah, it. Definitely is the beginning of the modern style of action.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of the we've already said this, but all of the modern tropes of action, of how action is done in movies, I think maybe not all of them, but certainly a majority of them got their start here.
Yeah.
Now, Joseph, you brought up that was your second favorite scene. Don't try to hit me, just hit me. What's your first favorite scene?
Ooh. Well, I said second because it's like, oh, that's my favorite. No, the other one's my favorite. No, the other one's
No, okay.
like from that first one. I mean, what is it? The the highway scene is pretty cool. That's like I said, that's Matrix in a bottle.
Oh, you mean Reloaded?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But from the first one, I would say my favorite moment's probably just the. God, I'm trying to remember when it was, but it was the very ending when they're running from the agents. Kind of like, I don't know. I really like that. Really like that one for a minute because, well, I mean, in the end, again, spoilers. Like, they get him. They get Neo.
Yeah.
And there is that cool fight, in the train. It's just like at this point we kind of know a little more about Agent Smith than we do Neo in terms of motivation. And it's just like him going up against Neo, who's still trying to discover himself. He doesn't really know if he's the one. At that point, he doesn't think he is the one because, the Oracle kind of threw him for a loop. And it's just, between these two guys, it's like, I don't know. I was really invested in that one. And then, when he gets him at the end and then he comes back, it's just like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I know that's sort of like, is it just cool or does it encapsulate the themes and more? It's like, I just think it's cool. It was really cool. I would say that was my whole reaction to the movie. It's like I had seen it so many times, like I said, parodied in other things. It's like, oh, this is it. This is from the Matrix. It's made from the Matrix. It's like, okay, well, I feel like I've seen the movie itself. I figured I would have tainted my viewing experience having, seen everything Matrix adjacent for the past, 15 or so years. But it's just like, well, all this is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's funny. You obviously I still think the fight at the beginning is great. Apparently, that took 6 months to train for that entire opening scene. So that was still great. Still one of my favorite scenes, just because of what it does as far as setup, and it's just a very well shot scene. And of course, we get the classic bullet time with Trinity and all that, which is awesome. And we have that to thank for the awesome bullet time scene in Shrek with Fiona when she fights all of Robin Hood's merry men.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's exactly the same. It's literally cut exactly the same.
So without Matrix, you wouldn't have Shrek. So,
Things I thought I would never hear for 300, Alex.
Yeah.
It was funny you mentioned, Joe, you mentioned earlier that scene in Matrix 3 where they're fighting at the very end. They're flying and fighting around and all that. From what I've heard, with WB seeing that film, or not even the film, that scene, they were like, yeah, we could take another stab at a Superman movie. Just from that scene. They were like, we could do that.
Yeah, all right, I can see that.
Yeah.
Wait, really? They used that as the basis for like they saw that and it's like, the technology's here. We can bring Superman back. That sort of thing.
I mean, that's what I heard. I don't know the exact details, but looking into it more, it was like that scene there is like, you just give them capes and it's like Superman fighting Zod or, whatever. But it's like, the technology's there, especially considering the last Superman film they made at that point would have been, I think, Superman 4, I think, which would have been like late 80s, early 90s, something like that.
Yeah.
So.
And then 3 years later, they'd make Superman Returns. Yeah. What a waste.
All right, so Jack, what's your favorite scene?
Oh, favorite scene. I mean, definitely from the sequels, we got the highway scene. Opening scene's up there. The dojo scene's great because still one of my favorite lines is in the dojo when they're fighting, and towards the end of that, you have Morpheus lean down. You think that's air you're breathing?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Yep. I mean, every line that Morpheus says in there is
perfection.
Yeah,
it's great.
Great.
No one can wear those sunglasses without the the handles like Morpheus does. He is such a boss.
Yeah.
No one can sit in a chair like Morpheus can.
Yeah.
Honestly.
He sits in a chair with more intensity than most people could fight.
Yes, exactly.
Uh,
Like, I feel like the movies would have been a lot shorter if we had just had them, you know, in a room. If Morpheus had a chair and the bad guy's in the room, he just sits down. It's game over. There's no point.
yeah.
Well, they had
That's
him in the
it.
chair, but the thing is, they took away his sunglasses. They were
Yeah.
3 steps ahead of him.
Yep.
Ah,
Which that brings me to my favorites, because my 2 favorite characters are Morpheus and Agent Smith. I mean, obviously Neo is the main character, but my favorite characters are Morpheus and Agent Smith, because those 2 characters are 100% sold out on what their motivation is. Because Neo is like, oh, am I the one? Am I doing this? Am I that? But Morpheus is 100%, I believe in the prophecy. I believe that you are the one. I believe that we're going to save the people from the Matrix. We're going to get everyone into Zion. Like, he is ironclad on his resolution that this is going to happen. And Agent Smith is ironclad, and his resolution isn't, I want to work for the Matrix and work for the machines. It's, I want to get out of here. I want to not be a slave to this system anymore, and I'm doing this only because I have to, which is the whole point of the interrogation scene, right? We get 3 stages of interrogation where we're peeling back the layers of Smith till we get to the point where, you know, he takes out the earpiece, he sends the other agents out, and he's like, I need to get out of here because I'm disgusted by everything that exists in this place. You are going to tell me the answer so that I can get out of here, or else I'm going to make your life miserable until you tell me the answer. That I think is the best scene of the peeling back the layers of Agent Smith, because of the interaction. I mean, Morpheus doesn't have any lines in that scene, I think, except for just like groaning and having blood out of his face. But the interaction there between 2 characters who are absolutely ironclad in their motivations, there's no flexibility in either of these characters, and it's fantastic to watch, and it's also fantastic to see the character, because Morpheus is upfront about all of his motivations from the beginning. You know exactly what he's about from the beginning. You don't know what Agent Smith is about until that time, because you're like, oh yeah, he's the agent. He is the person who is enforcing the will of the system, but he himself has no will.
Yeah, he's essentially a computer program until, again, it's perfect symbolism, takes out the earpiece that shows he's much more.
Yeah, shows that these are sentient artificial intelligences. These are entities that are capable, even if they don't have brains and bodies like people do, they have some capacity to think for themselves. They have some capacity to have will and desire that is their own, which is, is one of the major themes of the movie. And it's perfectly embodied in that character.
I think he's the only agent to ever take off his sunglasses.
I think some of them might get their sunglasses punched off. He's the only one who ever takes off his earpiece.
That too.
To be fair, he's the only one to actively take off his sunglasses.
Yeah, he's the only one. Yeah, he's the only one that's willing to consciously do
the earpiece, the glasses. Yeah, just the little things. Like I say, it's the little things.
Yeah, it's funny. You mention favorite characters. One of my favorite characters, who isn't even a main character, they're just a side character, but might be my favorite scene that isn't a fight scene in those films, is Neo's talk with the Oracle. She is just such a great character.
Yeah.
And that scene is very charming, and all the philosophy just with him knocking over the vase. And it's so
really
funny.
Gonna blow your mind is, would you have knocked it over if I hadn't said anything?
It's so good. I love it. And yeah, just how she pushes Neo forward in the story, and at the end, of course, we find out, what Morpheus said, where he, basically goes, she told you what you needed to hear, told us all what we needed to hear, and worked out okay. Which, if we're going into the second film, that's where I get a little frustrated, because you have the whole point of this movie is he's been told he's the one, and then the Oracle tells him he's not the one, so he's confused. And then at the end, it's like, no, she told him he's not the one, but he really is. She told him what he needed to hear, so he actually is the one. And then we get the second film, and they throw at us, oh, he's not the one. Or he's one of many ones. He's not that special. Basically, each film, they're trying to tell us that Neo's not that special. and they threw that at us again in the second film, and it's just seemed cheap because they'd already done it already. And this time they like, no, we really mean it this time. And at that point, just like, well, that's just dumb.
Yeah,
They needed Neo to go through some more changes in the sequel, so they're just like, I mean, the last one worked.
Yeah, like you can pull that trick once and it's clever and it works, and it's like, oh, okay, this is a character development thing. But you pull the trick twice and you're just
lazy.
No, stop that. Go away.
Yeah. So
if you don't have a motivation for your character, then just come up with a motivation for your character.
Think outside the box, or the Matrix, or the dodecahedron. Yeah. I don't know, one of them.
Yeah. Man.
I can hear the slight disdain in your voice there, Jack. Just like thinking back to it, it's like, oh.
Well, it's just so annoying with 2 and 3 that, first off, just watching 1 again, it ends so well. And we didn't need a 2 and 3. If they had never made a 2 and 3, I'm sure fans would have been begging for it to happen. And, even years later, like now, I'm sure they'd still be mentioning it, probably on lists of best sequels that never happened. But it's still a perfect story that encapsulates everything. We see the full hero's journey and all of that in the film. It all starts and finishes very well. It's all self-contained. Whereas 2 and 3, first off, the year 2003, they tried to do way too much with the Matrix. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but early 2003, I think they released Reloaded in March, and maybe it was April, but then they released Revolutions in November. They released both in the same year. They also released Animatrix.
Oh, man.
And they also released Enter the Matrix, the video game, which has like story parts that connect to 2 and 3. I don't know if you guys... Did you guys play Enter the Matrix, Path of Neo, any of those?
Didn't play it. I do know that like there's references there to the one character who has like the plans about what the robots are doing at the beginning of 2. Like that's referencing to the game.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And so they tried to do too much, and I mean, there was obviously the main thing where they tried pulling the same trick twice, which I think was a big mistake. And there was to put it simply, more talking, less action. They did a great job in the first film of combining a lot of the philosophical themes and topics. They would sort of interlace them through the fights. Like, obviously if Morpheus and Neo were talking, they were also fighting when they were doing it. Whereas here we have, okay, let's sit down with the Merovingian because this is very interesting. And later on we get, there's the architect, who I still think Will Ferrell's a better architect. Which, if you have not seen that MTV Awards video, it's brilliant. He is the best architect for sure.
Well, I do
release the Will Ferrell cut.
Yes.
There's because you brought up the Merovingian scene, because in that one it's 2 sections, right? They sit down and they do the talkie, and then they have the fight. And there's no talking. There's no pushing forward of information. It's just now we're going. We had the part where we went and talked, and now we have the part where we do all the fighting, as opposed to trying to find a way to have these things intermesh with each other. Like they like have it where
instead
they go
of the plot
immediately
leading to the action. It's just separate, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, the highway scene was great, but the whole scene where Neo's just there, just fighting all those guys, it's like, what's the point? Yeah, exactly. What are you doing?
We know he's going to win. It's just that's one of those things where it's like, as a piece, as a scene, it's enjoyable to watch him fight, but we didn't need to have these as 2 separate things. We could have had them as one thing, and something you could have had to cut somewhere where like they have to be beating the information out of the minions to get to the keymaker, and like they're finding things about like maybe you don't want to know what happens if you get to them, and they have these like little hints or something that's dropped, and that leads to the fact that people know that when Neo gets to the architect, he's going to have to make this difficult choice, and that gets building up to that. You could have done that in a way that interlaces them together, as opposed to having and almost like the reverse of this is when they're planning the architect heist, right? Because I think, if I remember correctly, don't they say we need to do this step, and then they cut to them doing that step, and then they cut back to them planning, and they say we need to do this step, and then they cut to them doing that step. Like,
I get that they needed to do it, but I still don't get the steps they took to get there. And it was a very convoluted heist.
yeah, well,
I mean, I feel like the heists in the Ocean's films were way more convoluted, and yet because they fleshed them out, were so much better.
yeah.
Well, the thing that got me sometimes, it's sort of like, oh yeah, the Matrix, where you've essentially hacked the world and almost anything is possible, but it's like, yeah, we got to go through this. And I guess in the end, it is essentially kind of these little mundane things.
Yeah. We can't just like hack. We have to follow the sequence of things in the computer world, because following that sequence has the effect of as if we were coding an entrance basically into the place we want to get to. Like, I guess maybe that's the logic, but I don't know. It's so weird. Part of that is just dealing with, like, it's a computer world. Why can't you just hack your way into it?
Yeah.
Well, that kind of gets me too. It's like they introduce the handlers in the first one. Like, what's his name? Not Tank. Tank's the one that gets killed by the traitor guy.
No, I think that's Dozer, actually. I think Tank's the one that
Dozer.
survives.
Oh well,
I think,
yeah, that's the guy. Tank. It's like they introduce like these operators. It's like, oh yeah, the outside guys. They can send you in these. They can help you. They can help you learn these things. But they do use them. It's like, oh yeah, they can help you get places. Oh yeah, turn right, take a left, stuff like that. But then they only do that, only do that in the sequels. It's like glorified navigation. It's like, should we do something really interesting with these guys? Like, I mean, that would take kind of a lot, and we gotta have the fun stuff in the Matrix. Outside, well, no, outside's just, I don't know, just tell them where to go. It's fine. It'll be fine.
For some reason, the Wachowskis thought would be very interested to see Zion and what's going on there with everybody. But what they did not realize is that we don't care about Zion. We could not care less.
The movie's not called The Zion. It's called The Matrix.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. It's nice to know that it exists as a goal that the characters are working towards. Maybe you need 5 minutes of it on screen as just like a reminder of, like, this is the thing that they're trying to save, trying to help. But that's not what we care about.
Yeah.
Not
Maybe
really.
a little bit of the command structure thing. But in the end, yeah, it's fluff.
Even just a picture frame of Zion in the ship would have been enough for me.
One of the characters has his
her.
wife, and you see a picture of the wife hanging on the wall, and he's like, that's what we're fighting for. And you're like, okay, cool.
All right, let's get back to the Matrix.
One of the most underrated things with Matrix, in my opinion, I don't know if you guys have heard of the YouTuber Sideways. His whole thing that he does is he does deep dives into soundtracks and scores for movies. And he did one on The Matrix. And because I'm not an expert in this, I'm not going to begin to explain it. But it is a very complex and underrated score. So I would definitely look up his video on the Matrix soundtrack, because it's insane how much detail he put into it. And it's shocking more people don't talk about it as one of the best scores ever.
Mr. Sideways Man, here's your plug, just so you know.
Yes.
What is it? Make sure to get up with us so we can get that paycheck. No, it's not on mute again.
That's the only reason I plugged him.
Now I will say
it's all about the money.
Oh yeah, of course. That's what we're doing this for. And I almost said, and I will say, but I won't say it this time.
Yeah, just to give you a small idea of how much detail was put in this, you have in the first Matrix when Neo first wakes up in his cocoon, he gets out, you start to hear this choir singing. There's not a lot of voices, but you hear enough when you first see him waking up next to all these batteries with other humans. So the choir voices are meant to represent the humans. And that's why they chose to use choral sounds for that. And then it cuts to this scene where you see all these battery pods, and they use a huge choir for it. They totally change it. It starts out small, and then when they cut to seeing all of these people, you then suddenly hear a huge choir. So it's very cool the amount of detail that was put into it. And I would definitely say giving the YouTuber Sideways a watch on his deep dive into the soundtrack would definitely be worth it. So yeah, I think I feel like that pretty much covers most of our thoughts. I definitely, I can't see anybody else doing these roles. If Will Smith had ended up accepting the role, it'd be a very different movie.
Yeah.
So
yeah, these are very, very much iconic characters iconic roles, iconic characters, iconic actors.
Yeah.
Which does transition us, I think, to discussing the trailer for the fourth movie.
Yes.
Because there are some. I have thoughts. I mean, one of them is we already said first movie was excellent and it didn't need any sequels. The trilogy also is wrapped up very succinctly, right? It's
Right.
wrapped up in this. We have closed the loop, and now everyone who we have because we know that Neo is one of the ones, and that there's loops, and each time the loop closes, it gets better. So we close the loop, but now we still have the same person who's the one in the new loop, except he was kind of maybe dead the first time we did this.
Yeah.
And then, if I remember correctly, doesn't Trinity also die at the end of the third movie? And now
She does.
Yeah.
Back somehow.
That's what makes me think is, oh, you go ahead, Jack. It might be the same thing I'm thinking of.
No, I was going to say my theory that I've thought about is that at the end of Matrix, I mean, we see that we do think Neo is dead and he's kind of carried away. My theory is that I have no idea about Trinity, but with Neo, my thought is instead of sort of letting him die and letting the next one sort of come into power and, waiting for all that to happen and all that chaos, they're like, okay, so we found this one. It's the most powerful one we've seen yet. Let's keep him alive and contained so the one won't rise up. Because the other one won't rise up unless the other one has died and the cycle repeats. But the cycle can't repeat if this current one is still alive.
If one is still alive, 1 + 1 doesn't come into the picture.
Yes, exactly. There can't be two ones.
There can't be two ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually, I guess that actually would explain it. You could almost explain it as Neo is in his own personal matrix. He's not in the matrix proper. If he's in his own personal matrix that is meant to contain him, that's why Trinity is there. He's an AI program that's been created to keep him somewhat keep him distracted by her, as opposed to as opposed to trying to question this matrix. He's like, okay, I have the thing that I'm interested in. I have the thing. I have the person that I love here in front of me, and trying to get back with her, pursuing her inside of his personal matrix. And that's why we see that there's a very noticeable scene where he's taking dozens of blue pills, which is, I mean, obviously that's symbolic to the first movie, but also I think he personally is being sedated because he personally is being stuck in this matrix, in his own personal matrix, as opposed. I mean, this is obviously we haven't seen the movie yet.
Yeah.
This is just me theorizing.
I would almost go with that. I could almost see that happening, except in the trailer, there's a very clear still of Trinity's body being plugged into the Matrix. So I'm thinking somehow they brought her back. I don't know how.
Must have missed that scene or clip.
Yeah, it was a very quick still. They had a lot of stills, but somebody, again, as most YouTubers do, they paused each frame and studied each one for a solid hour. And
this left hand looks like actor Lawrence Fishburne's hand by the specific wrinkle pattern. Morpheus 2 confirmed.
Hey, if that happens, I'm down. Though I am a little bummed because I can't remember the actor's name. They did confirm that the other guy we're seeing, the Morpheus-like character, they actually confirmed that is Morpheus, which is a huge bummer because I loved Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, I might be with you, Joe, where it's Morpheus might be my favorite character from the trilogy. Yeah. And Lawrence Fishburne just owned that character, and I would hate to see anybody else fill his shoes, especially since Fishburne's still alive. And it's not from what Fishburne said, unless he's just playing us and it's going to turn out Fishburne is in the movie after all. But from what Fishburne has said, the Wachowskis didn't even ask him about it, which it's weird that you wouldn't ask the only person who actually survived the Matrix trilogy to come back.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're planning. I do sort of miss the green tint that the original Matrix, when they were in the Matrix, that you sort of had this sort of green color when they were inside the Matrix. Mm-hmm. I don't see that here, so I don't know if just the Matrix is upgraded and they realized, it was a bit greener last time, let's change that.
Well, that actually does fit because if I remember correctly, in the perfected Matrix at the end of 3, I don't remember it having the green tint. It has
the sunrise at the end.
Oh, you're right. When the architect comes up to the Oracle, that's a good point. Yeah.
When mom and dad have a conversation about their new baby.
That's right.
That's what that scene literally is.
Yeah.
So,
It's a good little Matrix.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's good. I think it's funny. There has been so much hype for it. I don't know why. I mean, I get it's a Matrix and it was huge, and the other films, despite them not being good, were huge. But you have to remember, 2 and 3 weren't good. They really, I mean, they had some good scenes, but overall, I mean, they wrapped up things as best as they could. But there were so many problems with them. I don't know why people would be excited for another one. I'm just saying.
Well, I think the main reason people are excited is because this is deliberately they've shown, and well, it is a little bit of nostalgia baiting, which that.
Well, I don't doubt that.
That gets butts and seats, but it's also very deliberately like modeling itself after just the first Matrix. Like we have the whole what is it? Neo meeting Trinity, except it's kind of reversed. Like instead of Trinity being the kind of pursuer, it's like Neo knows, like, oh, do I know you? That sort of thing. And the kung fu scene, the fact that Neo's eventually gonna wake up. I feel like they're trying to recapture the mystery element that was the first act of the first Matrix, and they're either gonna try to. Well, and I really hope they don't, but it's like they're deliberately doing that. It's like, oh yeah, it's just like the first one, and then boom, rug pulled out from under you. We're doing something completely different, or or they're doing it because that's what worked the first time. So let's get the big beats. I don't know.
Here's an idea that might work. This is not related to the theory. This is if they're just playing it straight and Neo's back in the Matrix. If they're presenting it to us this way because they're trying, the trailer is intended to invoke us remembering what the first one was like. But if they make this actual movie where Neo isn't our POV character, if new Morpheus is our POV character, so we're seeing him trying to wake Neo up. So because like in the first Matrix, we don't know what's going on, and so we're following Neo figuring out what's going on. But now in this Matrix 4, we actually know what's going on. So Neo isn't our POV character because he knows less than the audience does at this particular situation. So it would make sense if we're following new Morpheus and we're cheering on him trying to wake Neo up, and Neo is fighting it. Like he wants to stay asleep now for whatever reason, for whatever the problem in the story is. I think that would work. That would work where they've shown us a trailer that's meant to invoke the first one on purpose as a nostalgic thing, but the actual movie that they present us with has a different focus.
I could see that working. I feel like it would work even better if they had gotten, again, real Morpheus back. If they have a good explanation, they can pull it off in the film. I'll be willing to accept it, even though I won't necessarily be happy about it. But if they do what you're mentioning, I think that could be very interesting. But I'm just thinking, going back to what Joe was saying, where they're trying to reminisce about what your thoughts on the original were like. There was another film a couple of years ago that did the same thing called The Force Awakens. And
that's where the apprehension comes in.
Yeah. So I really don't want them to just, trying to bring in all the nostalgia, and it's just like, oh, they just made the first one again. Great. So
that's actually.
But Jack, they have a plan, unlike the Force Awakens, right?
I hope their plan is to actually wrap it up.
That actually brings up a thought that I had comparing those two franchises, because we the first Matrix, excellent movie. Everyone agrees it's a great movie. 2 and 3 are, they're things that you will watch.
They're there.
If they're playing in the background, then you're like, okay, whatever. I guess I'll watch this. But they don't detract from the first movie. Like the existence of 2 and 3 does not subtract from the quality of Matrix 1. But the existence of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, the existence of The Force Awakens and the subsequent 2 movies that we don't even name because they're so terrible, the existence of those 2 movies actively subtracts from the quality of the original trilogy. And I'm afraid that that's what they're going to do here with Matrix 4, where it's not just that they're making more stuff in the universe that isn't any better, but it doesn't make anything worse. They're going to add stuff that actually makes it worse than it was before. With fingers crossed that it doesn't happen, but that's kind of that's my closing thought on the trailer. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. So I want it to be good, but I'm not going to get my hopes up.
Yeah.
To put it simply.
Our attitudes can be described as cautious optimism, and only that.
Very cautious optimism.
Yes.
And I didn't say it that time. What is it? Another thing that goes with the, harkening back to the first one. They're really playing up the White Rabbit stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the Alice in Wonderland stuff, and Jefferson Airplane. Can't get that song out of my head. Curse you, Matrix Resurrections.
I thought it was a very good trailer. I really enjoyed the trailer, and I thought the song, of course, fitted very well into the themes of the trailer and the Matrix in general. So they have my attention. Let's just see if they can keep it for 2 hours with the movie.
Oh yeah, the pitch worked. Let's see if the product works.
Exactly.
Yep.
I think there was one more thing I was going to mention. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Check the minutes.
No, we're doing fine. Let me see.
Oh no, like the
check your notes.
The minutes document.
Oh no.
Oh,
I don't
number
think it was on
ratings.
there.
Number ratings for the.
Well, yeah, we're gonna do three words to describe it, and a number rating for each film and for the trilogy.
Oh, I remember.
Okay.
I wish. My thoughts are the reason he didn't is because I think they were probably also filming John Wick 4 at the same time. But I wish Keanu would have shaved, at least look like Neo.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they just pulled him off of. They literally dragged him away from in the middle of the John Wick set. They're like, all right, let's start filming Matrix right now. He's like, but don't I need to shave? No, you look great. It's just John Wick.
Mr. Reeves, please shave. Yeah, I don't think so.
Now, if at the end of the film he's shaved and like he's back, he's got his mojo back and all that, then it's like okay. But if he just looks like John Wick the entire film, it's like, come on.
I think that's going to be the case, unfortunately, because he's blocking like bullets and missiles with the long hair and the beard. I'm pretty sure it's just like, yeah, you can't interfere with this contract. Just, I don't know, make up some reason. It's a side effect of the blue pills. I don't know.
Yeah, there are no razors in the Matrix.
There are no razors in the Matrix.
Of course.
There are no razors in the Matrix. There is no spoon. There are no razors.
Oh, no. Not the spoon.
Oh, God. Closing thought. The spoon is actually an excellent analogy. Like, it actually is very...
Oh, it is. I love it.
It is, but I don't know. For some reason, I thought it was really funny. It's like there's just this random British kid. It's like, there is no spoons. I'm sorry, who are you?
No, it's great. It's exactly how it's an inverse. Well, we'll talk about this later. We'll talk about this when we have a rambling podcast, not about a specific episode.
Pulls down board the spoon.
I'll get out the cork board with the thumbtacks and the red string, and I'll tell you my ideas.
We tend to do that a lot here. That's a good thing, though. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'll give you my thoughts on how magic systems could work, because essentially the Matrix has a magic system, and the magic system is Neo. But we'll talk about that some other time.
All right, what's left? Are we gonna rank these and then close it out?
Yeah, rank these, and we wanted to do a 3-word description. I don't know if everyone else prepared one, but
I have like a. Yeah, you go for it.
My 3-word description is flashy existential robots.
Very nice, very nice. Jack?
You go first. I'm still thinking.
Oh, all right. It's pretty cool.
Well, you're not wrong.
That's my whole experience. It's like, oh, this is what it is. It's pretty cool.
Okay. If I'm going to describe the Matrix Trilogy, less is more.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's pretty good.
That's a very good one.
Yeah,
Can I change mine?
Change yours? I mean, sure.
No, I can't do it.
My ranking is pretty simple because it matches up with the films. The first, second, and third, I rank 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, I thought we're doing just ranking in order, or are we doing like out of 10 ranking?
Oh, out of 10, like is like on a scale. Like, are we doing like like 5 stars, so like you can do 5, 4.5,
Yep.
4. We can do that. That's fine.
Let's do out of 10. Let's do out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Out of 10's good.
Who wants to go first?
Nose goes. Wait, the video call ended.
I would say for Matrix 1 is 9.5. Can't quite give it a 10. Maybe that's just because I don't have as much nostalgia for it. It's definitely 9 or 9.5. The other two are like, I don't know, 4 or 5, somewhere in that range. Like they're fine. The series as a whole is an 8 because the other two don't detract too much from the overall enjoyment of the first one. But that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar boat. For me, Matrix is a perfect 10 just because I have so much nostalgia with it, and the more I watch it and the more I read things on it and just the process behind the film, the more I appreciate it and the more I love it. So I'd give that a perfect 10. It's one of my all-time favorite films easily. And then 2 and 3, they're probably closer to like your 4 and your 5 range. And the series overall, I'd probably give, closer to a 7 or an 8 because the second and third do have some cool scenes. They have some things that are enjoyable. Do we need them outside of the first film? Not really, but since we have them, we kind of have to accept that they're there. And they're not all total trash. So
that's pretty good. That's a good descriptor. I'd say just from seeing it in 2021 and all I experienced, not being connected like nostalgically or anything, I'd say it's a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good. I like the first act and the third act in the first Matrix. Kind of a little better than I like the middle part. I don't know. It's sort of like the kind of the betrayal subplot kind of took away from it for some. I don't know.
it still hurts.
That was a little weak.
Every time I watch that scene, it still hurts when he's unplugging everybody. That still hurts every time I watch it.
Oh yeah.
It is pretty brutal, but I don't know. Kind of. But yeah, and then I'm able to kind of turn my brain off enough for the other two, like the good parts of the other two, to give them both just like a solid 5. And then overall, like again, the overall series, 7 out of 10. You watch the first one, it's great. You've watched YouTube clips of the best parts of the second and third, it's great. Yeah. It was definitely an outsider looking into this whole, well, for lack of a better term, rabbit hole of like why everybody was obsessed with this thing. And I can see why. I can see why people like it, Jack. I can see why it's like one of your favorites. I see the appeal, but it's just kind of a 7 for me.
That's okay. We're all sinners, so
Everybody makes
nobody's perfect.
Everybody makes mistakes. Your mistake is not watching the Matrix earlier. So
that and Hocus Pocus, apparently. But that's for another episode.
That's for a later episode.
That's right.
It's a surprise tool we can use for later.
Yeah, and by later we mean about a month from now. But we'll have to leave you guys waiting for that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for all of you tuned in. If you did, we appreciate you. If you didn't, it's okay because you didn't miss anything. So.
If you've been listening, good job. Here's your metaphysical gold star. It's right on your chest. Don't look at it. Oh, you did. I know it. And if you haven't been listening, well, wait, no, did I say haven't first? If you have been listening, what are you doing? Get back to work.
All right.
Well, you heard it here, folks. So thank you all for listening, and hope you'll tune in next time.
Alrighty. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.